This is Call with Dad's podcast, where today's issues, concerns, and joys of being a dad are discussed, with your hosts E.A. Maynard and Mr. Pancakes sharing their views, experiences, and all things they know. Join the journey with us. Welcome to Call with Dads, more than a podcast or a website, but your home for a community of dads who want to be better. Now let's get started.
Let's discuss wives.
Yeah,
Always a fun topic, wives.
wives, my favorite.
Yeah, well, if they're listening, hopefully they don't get too upset from some of these comments, but
I love you very much. You're so wonderful. You're the beautifulest woman in the world.
Hey, I'll admit, I do have a sexy wife. I will say that, and that's not to kiss up. I mean,
that's a good thing, though. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't have married her, and I mean,
right.
In the lack of a better word, maybe this is a little vulgar to say, but I wouldn't have married her and pumped a kid into her. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, I understand. Trust me, I understand. I mean, the fact is we're guys. Of course, we're going to sit here and we well enough know that our standards, most guys' standards, one thing is most guys have to have a physical attraction to the woman say, okay, I want to be with this girl more than just in an evening or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I will see a lot of these guys on Facebook, a lot of people we talk to and engage with, as well as myself. I preach 100 times over, all the adult film movies and, seeing that stuff and staying away from this, staying true to your wife and stuff like that. All well and good. And I'm totally on board with that. And that's how it should be. That's for real. But if I'm watching the movie and Jenny McCarthy busts out them big old hoonams, I'm going to be like, I'm a guy, so such is life. I am male.
It's like I've even told my wife, if I see a pretty girl, of course I'm going to look. I have no intention of doing anything. It's but
it's just a natural attraction to it. Whoa.
Well, I don't think I do it that badly, but
cool car.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, if a cool car is something that looks real nice, of course you're going to look to say, oh, look. But it's not like I don't sit there and go, oh, like I'm a 12-year-old boy seeing a pair of boobs for the first time.
Like this with my hands.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. And, we still have our urges. We still have our desires. And the big thing is as, like I said, the people we interact with, I think the general point is to keep your urges and all your desires and all that under control so that you
keep them in check.
Yeah, keep them in check so you can focus on your wife. And I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I agree with that. I mean, for me, the only person I want to play around with is my wife. There's no question of that. And, like I said, for me, I've looked at women and I'm like, wow, she's cute, or wow, what a cute butt. But at the same time, I'm not sitting there going, wow, I think she would be a fun roll in the hay.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, my wife, for lack of a better term, is my best friend.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's the one person in the world that I decided I would like to spend all day, every single day with forever. You know what I mean? So, that's the idea behind marriage. And if you're getting married without that idea, then
why get married? Yeah.
Why get married? That's the goal and idea of marriage. There's gonna and if you go into that idea, without the notion and thought that there's going to be ups and downs and you're going to hate her, she's going to hate you.
Right. You'll still love each other.
But you got to work through it, find a way around it, fix it, and move forward. And that's a big problem with people in today's society. As soon as they get bad, they immediately go, I don't want to, and they're done.
Right. Oh, I agree with that. And, there's a lot about marriages that you and I absolutely do agree with. You know, the one thing that I think you and I differ on, and like when you got married, you said that you told your wife she can stay at home, doesn't have to work, all this, right? Me, I told my wife I'm not marrying somebody that's going to not work. Whoever I marry has to have a job because I want somebody that wants to have a future, wants to build something, but will help me work to build more than just, and everyone has their own thing. And I'm at the point now that my wife and I have been married long enough that I tell her, hey, if you want to quit your job, we have to make some massive changes, but it's doable. We just have to move to a new location, blah, blah, blah. But when her and I first got married, and she's at the point now of she's worked hard for everything she's done. She's done a lot, and she has her master's degree. She's working in the field that she has her degree in. So, yeah, where me, I have a business degree and I design. So, I do nothing my degree is in. But the difference is like I guess in my mindset, I've seen stay-at-home wives, right? And where I grew up, it was just I had no respect for them. In fact, my stepmother was a stay-at-home mom, and literally as a teenager, I thought she was the biggest loser just because what are you doing all day? And this is just my point of view as a teenager at the time, because I knew I could clean that house, and if you're at home every day, even say you do the deep cleaning that you pay a suite of maids to come in and do a 3-hour cleaning, right? Where they're cleaning the windows, they're cleaning the floors, they're in the grout cleaning with a toothbrush, all that stuff, right? Okay, so let's say out of 1 month, you spend 3 days doing that, right?
Right.
The rest of the time, you vacuum the floor, you dust, and in a normal sized family house, that takes you what? A half hour to an hour? And, you know, I understand it makes sense if you have little kids, you know, like our kids' ages. My daughter, 2, my son, 5, turning 6 in a couple of days. That age, I can understand that. You know, you're entertaining, especially if you're homeschooling and you're very much active. But like my stepmother, literally, I had no idea what she did in her life other than clean, sit around, and then talk about how busy she was. And I'm like, okay, as an adult now, it's even gotten worse because I'm sitting here, because this is why I said I don't want a wife that doesn't want to work. Because I got married later in life, and you and I both did. And for me, I figured out I could do my laundry, I could clean my house, and you don't have, especially if you don't have kids, or you have older kids, you can vacuum every other day if you have kids. If you don't have kids, maybe once or twice a week. And then you cook dinners. You don't have to cook extravagant dinners, but even good dinners, I've had criminy moments where I forgot to plan out what I was going to cook for dinner and pulled something out and just made something on the fly and said, okay, well, and I'm feeding a family of 4 when I do this. So it's not like you're sitting there going, okay, I'm a slave over the stove all day to make this immaculate meal, because no one's going to make an immaculate meal every day.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I've eaten meatloaves growing up, you know? And
best. Love meatloaf.
It's funny. My kids' two favorite dishes, I think, right now are meatloaf and my meatballs. Which there's a joke that my wife and I have about my meatballs that we're not going to say here just because it's not appropriate. But
it's not appropriate.
But let's just say that everybody that tastes my balls really do enjoy my meatballs.
That's a good time.
But literally, I mean, it's not like you have to cook this big, massive Thanksgiving meal every day.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and heck, you could even do crock pots, casseroles. And that's what a lot of homemakers do is they're expert casserole makers. Because they know they can throw it all in a pot, put it in the oven, go do other things.
Right.
And they wrap all this up after they've spent the whole day doing nothing so that their husbands think they've come home to see all this nice stuff done.
Right. That's what crock pots are for.
Exactly. But you, on the other hand, very pro Betty homemaker. You like that kind of mindset?
And half. Yeah.
All right.
Half and half.
So let me hear your views on it then.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm kind of like half and half when it comes to the homemaker kind of deal. I guess I would say I have sort of the same background as you, where I grew up with a lot of people I know had moms and family members, and every the mom and the dad all worked and stuff like that. And my mother was nuts.
Right.
I mean, she in and out of prison, so on and so forth. Just a complete psychopath. I consider my stepdad a saint, basically. And honestly, today, being a little bit more on the religious side, I consider my stepdad more of somebody who was sent by a higher power in order to protect me and my brother, because my father was unable to at the time, So I kind of look at it as that. So my mother didn't really work; she's in and out of work, so I never really understood that. And I always kind of thought, the mom and the dad are supposed to work. I realized thought that mindset. But as I got older, I don't discourage my wife from working, and I don't tell her she's not allowed. I actually encourage her to better herself, and I've actually encouraged her to try to start a business or anything, something, whatever she wants, but I definitely encourage women a lot more today to definitely, if serving your family and being at home serves you and your children better, then I think that is something that you should fulfill and be happy with. I don't feel as though it's appropriate for women or mothers or wives to think of themselves as less than men because they don't work or have a career or are super successful or this or that, the other. In my mind, I look at it as a whole, a unit, you know what I mean? The man and the woman are a unit, and they have children, and the children are there being raised, while the man and the woman they have their, and I guess I was explaining this to my wife the other day. Essentially, if you break down everything, pretend there are 10 tasks, right? There's 10 of them. I guess I'm blurred, so. But pretend there's 10 tasks.
10 tasks.
Right. So imagine if your boss comes to you, boss, God, whatever you want to call him up there, comes to you and says, you, John, and you, Mary, you need to do these things and you need to do these things. The man goes and starts doing those 5 tasks. Then the woman, Mary or whatever, goes over and says, well, I don't want to. I also want to do those tasks. Well, who does those 5? The other 5 then?
Right.
You know, so I look at it like that. Like there's 10 tasks, 5 of them are for the man, 5 of them for the woman. They're both equally as important, and they both equally need to be done.
Right.
You know, just because the man's job or tasks earn a monetary value doesn't mean the value is more important. You know, because there's also a thing, I see this online every now and again, you know, you see the memes. There's a Facebook thing that I follow called Trad West. You know, it's more so about traditionalism. It's a pretty cool thing. But they show a picture of a you know, a woman all like drawn out, so on and so forth. And she's like, oh, I worked for my boss and so on and so forth for, you know, for his importance or whatever. And, you know, and she's talking to a woman that's like happy and nice. And she's like, and the woman that's happy and nice is like, oh, that's cool. You know, I don't work. I serve my family. And then the woman that's all dark and drawn out is like, oh, how could you? Blah, blah, blah. It's so terrible. And the woman's like, I'm happy. You know, and in a way, it's like, why would you rather serve this boss and entity, that this company or corporation that gives two what's about you and could care less? You know, so the day you quit, or maybe you worked there for 30 years, the day you retire, before you even leave the office, they're going to have an open position on the internet for you, trying to fill your spot.
Oh yeah,
so
without a question.
You're expendable. Now when it comes to your family, you're not expendable. You know, a mother is just as important as a father. It's very important. You know, these are two positions that are required. You know, and then one of the things that I actually, a lot of people don't think about, and they're kind of, a lot of people think of it as kind of, I guess, a conspiracy theory. But there's this whole thing about, you know, years and years ago. Obviously, we all know who the Rockefellers are. You know, right now, so essentially the Rockefellers worked to create a version of feminism, but the point was to create and develop. Is the same thing with schools. They did the same thing with schools. Create and develop this entire society of workers. That way there is no interest in ever moving further than they currently are. You know, you move up, but you think you're moving up. You're only moving up like this much in your career. You move from $100,000 a year to $120,000 to $130,000, $140,000, then you retire, right? Where they're moving up 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, stuff like that. You know, so the goal was to create this ideology of feminist women that they don't think of themselves as servants to their family, or, you know, workers for their family. They're not there to serve their family. Like, I think of myself as a man. I serve my family. You know, I go to work every day to make money and take all that money and give it to my wife and my daughter and for my house. And so my wife can have all this nice stuff and so on and so forth, food and whatever else. That's my goal. That's my job, right? Right. Because I serve my family. So the idea was to build feminism to make women think the same way as a man, but to look at themselves as less because they don't do what the man does. The man, what he does is higher and better than what she does. She's less because she doesn't do that. So that was the idea of it. So what it did was it put the woman to work too. So now, instead of one person earning an income and essentially getting their taxes taken out and pushed, now you have two people earning incomes, getting their taxes taken out and pushed into the government, as well as the secondary portion of that is you now no longer have somebody at home taking care of your children, raising your children, pumping your family traditions and ideologies into your children. You know who is? The government, the schools, the public schools and public programs, because you got to drop your kid off at school, stay there all day long. Then after school's over, what's the first thing they do? Right to after school care, to some other after school program. So you got strangers, essentially teaching your children all these different programs and ideologies and simply just how to be, a good employee over the years. And I believe that's kind of where a lot of this came from. It's an interesting way to look at it. And I know I'm a little nuts. I get it. But I believe all that stuff is real, and I do believe the true traditional American culture, essentially it's called American traditionalism. I truly believe that is the way it should be. Everybody's different, and I 100% understand that. I got a buddy that's actually the stay-at-home dad, and his wife works full-time. So it is, the roles are reversed, but that kind of just fell into the way because they both were military and he got out. Right. So it kind of just fell that way. But even so, it's still okay. It doesn't. One person of the family is at home. So I truly believe a traditional nuclear family structure is how it should be.
Well, let me jump in here because there's a couple things. One, going back to the school, public schools ran by the government absolutely is all about teaching kids to be drones and work and memorize facts, do things in repetition, all these things. It's not there to teach them how to learn, but just how to learn what they're supposed to do. Right. I mean, that's why they have standardized testing to see what kids are falling in the standardized categories they want. I'm right there. Schools originally, when it was ran by the community and not by the government, those schools back in those times were set up to teach kids how to read, how to do math, how to be able to manage different things for their farms, for their parents' businesses, how to make sure that they could read contracts and sales slips and be able to advance their lives.
That's why the Department of Education was created. And the Rockefellers had a huge hand in creating the Department of Education.
Exactly. Now, so with today's world, stepping into today's world, you mentioned about your one buddy or a guy stay-at-home dad, where for me, like I've made a comment or probably several on here where I work from home. I mean, to me, I get to do that. And in doing so, I'm able to manage to where I can homeschool my kid because there's a ton of reasons I have no interest in having my kid in public school, especially in Northern Virginia. I mean, I think you and I clearly understand what I'm getting at there. But
if you see a rainbow flag that only has 6 colors, not 7, run in the other direction.
At this point, I don't think there's a school in Northern Virginia without at least a rainbow flag in every room. And that's part of it. But it's also, like I said, we did for our local school, a tour and a little introduce, whatever it's called, for kindergarten for my son.
Right.
They mentioned literally about... don't worry if your kid doesn't know the alphabet. And I'm sitting there thinking, my kid's reading. And then they're like, oh, well, if your kid can't do this or if your kid can't do that. Now, mind you, at first we were sitting there like, no, we're going to fight to get our kid into these classes, this and that. And I think I've told you he had speech delay, so they wanted to put him in a handicap class. And I'm like, no. The problem is my son would do horrible in a traditional school, and I've realized that very clearly homeschooling him, because giving him that freedom to learn, like we did a homeschooling class today, and with the curriculum, we're using an online service for curriculum and such, right? And I'm like, what grade do I have him set at? And I look up and I see it's 2nd grade science he's on. And I'm sitting there going, so if he went to public school, he'd be learning A, B, C, D, E, F, G, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's it.
I mean, they might be learning see spot run or basic things like that.
Right.
And, you know, it's like my wife or my mom, I think it is, thinks that I brag about my son so much, this and that. And the one thing I realize is I listen to other homeschoolers, like I listen to other podcasts about homeschoolers, and I listen to the things they say, and I almost think that my son is just up to the standard homeschooling level. So to me, my son is very smart. But you listen to homeschoolers and they're sitting there going, like, what is it? In most public schools, they don't get through a single textbook in a year. And with us, my son's science started off in kindergarten. We've gone through the entire kindergarten, first grade, and now we're in second grade.
Right.
I mean, and we'll continue through the summer. The likelihood is I'll have to stop and then do my own, because I don't want him to be in sixth grade by the time we finish summer. But
yeah.
I mean, I would hate him to be sixth grade going into first. But,
right, yeah.
And for anyone, that is a joke. Might not be a good one, but the fact is
I mean, but that's a reality.
Yeah, it
right?
is a reality. You know? And
I mean,
going back to your about the having the traditional family setup, like we don't have the traditional family setup here where I do for my house, right? I'm with my son almost every single moment of the day. This week's kind of a rarity. I have my mom in town, so she's taking my son off on field trips and all this.
Right.
Gives me a little quiet time, and you know, he's with my mom. I have no worries, all this. But on the same token, or the same coin, but on the other side, I work from home. I'm constantly with him. I see him. I see his progress. I know my son better than anybody else possibly could. Right. And that's not understating it. Just like my daughter, I spend a lot of time with her, and she does go to a daycare just because a 2-year-old is hard to have around when you work from home and homeschooling. So once she gets to that point, I'm going to bring her home to homeschool. And we have all sorts of programs they're involved in and all this stuff. I mean, it's not like they're socially exiled. And the nice thing is majority of the time when they see other kids, they're seeing other homeschooling kids, which a lot of them are either on his level or they're kids that he can relate to because he's doing it. And with my wife working, she goes to the office. She works from home every now and then, but for the most part, she's at the office. I work from home. I do my job. I work in evenings after the kids goes to sleep on professional or the things that we're trying to build up. But I plan all that out. And that is, I'm lucky enough to do that now. And before my son started school, like kindergarten level stuff, he did go to daycares, and literally I found it just bothered me sending him to daycares. And well, just like I don't love sending my daughter to daycare, but one, she can learn norms from some of the other kids. There is some benefit to it, and I'm not going to deny that. But
there's a little bit.
Yeah, but like I said, once it gets to that point, I'm bringing her home where she can hopefully in another year or two, probably 2 years is what I'm figuring, start kindergarten. So have her start kindergarten at 4 years old if she's mentally there and get her going. I mean, it's all these things. So
and a lot of people don't realize, the benefits of having the kids home all the time, and the parents, there with them all the time. They develop a different feeling towards their family. When they get older, family is such a more important thing. Because if you're separated from your family all day, every day, you look at other people as more important rather than your family.
Right.
So, and then the other thing is like people, it's today, I mean, the good thing about the internet and technology and social media, a lot of people's arguments for homeschool, oh, well, they're not going to get all the social this and social. There's
Jeez.
1,000 social media class or groups that you can right here where I live. There's like a ton of them. I could just get online and be like, hey, new to homeschooling, kids looking for some buddies. Can we come over or do something? And I get a bunch of people, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? The school my daughter goes to, my daughter actually goes to school.
Right.
But again, I would totally have her in homeschooling, and me and my wife are the exact same. Homeschool 100% of the way, all day long. But the only reason she actually goes to a school, this particular school it's a private school. The school is it's called classical education.
Right.
And so they teach school in a very classic traditional way. And they also, like their students are like 3 or 4 grades above normal public school, stuff like that. They also teach things such as like the Constitution, freedom, conservatism, traditionalism. They teach these things, and technically it is a Christian school, but they don't prioritize religion.
Right.
If that makes sense. They prioritize. They have religion. Obviously, religion's number one because God, then country, then family, or God. It's God, family, then country, something like that.
Right.
But they teach that, but they don't like overemphasize. You know what I mean? It's not like God and family and stuff like that.
Right.
They're like right here with each other. So they teach that traditional style. And when you go to this, if you go to the school, you literally feel like you are in the early 1900s because everything's handmade, everything's made out of wood and stone. Like the students, they teach a lot of pretty much almost all the tables and the desks are all handmade by the students, like the upperclassmen and stuff.
Oh, nice!
It's really cool. And they one of the number one things that I like about them that they pride themselves on is they take $0 from any federal, state, county, or city government of any sort. They take no donations, no nothing. They have no what do they call it in politics? Where like big donors or anything like that.
Oh, grants.
None of that.
Right.
Yeah, like they take none of that. All and everything that they do is all funded by tuition and selling clothes and after school care and classes and whatever else they sell.
Right.
All of it. So they essentially it's basically a school that's similar to the way school was years ago and the way it should be. So that's one of the reasons why she goes. Otherwise, we'd totally do homeschool. And it's so far it's been pretty amazing. They're pretty good. They have a few quirks, but who doesn't? You know what I mean?
Right. And like my wife and I have had this discussion because she thinks it'd be good to send the kids to public school, and not public. I'm sorry, private. And
private.
And I figured it out is for the cost of a nanny, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cost of a nanny for one kid would cover the private school costs, standardly. But now for a parent with one kid, that depending on your area, the private schools cost and the cost of a nanny, blah, 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 you could almost homeschool. And the problem I have with even private schools nowadays is that before I got my wife on board for homeschooling, one of the big things is we took a tour, and I think just rehashing something I said before, we took a tour on several different private schools, and one Christian school was so judgmental that my son, who was not even in kindergarten. He said, well, by the time he finishes kindergarten, he has to read this. And my son starts reading it, and he forgot the word the. And he goes, see, he wouldn't do well here. I'm like, you said this is what they have to read by the time they finish kindergarten. Not even start it. And he read it and skipped a word. Right. I mean, that I'm like, okay, fine. Went to another school, and they're sitting there talking about, well, our kids can find books of everything that they feel is appropriate for them. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that answers a big question for me. So, yeah. And then just the fact of all the different things. There was one school that sounded good. The tour was good. They were a Christian school, but they only went up to junior high. After junior high, they were supposed to be opening up a high school branch and blah, blah, blah. But, a lot of people make plans and all this, and it's a toss-up if the plans actually happen as they say or what so have you. Right. And, looking at it, the nanny for one kid covers what it would cost to send a kid to a private school, at least around here where I live. Yeah. When I bring my daughter in to the homeschooling environment as well, the cost to have a nanny while I work from home and I get to interact with my kids because I enjoy having my kids as my office mate a whole lot more than I do talking to Joe and Suzanne at the coffee machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, with the water cooler.
Yeah, so, and the cost of 2 kids is just a fraction above what it would cost, what a fraction of the cost for a homeschooling or a private school for 2 kids. Private school, right? And, everyone talks about, oh, well, I don't have the money to do it, so I'm sending my kid to a private school. I can't afford a nanny so I'm sending my kid to a private school. And I'm not knocking you it sounds like the school you send your daughter to is an amazing, great school. Yeah. It gives...
that's that one school. It's like you said about all those other private schools. I solely agree with you on that. They are even private Christian schools that pride themselves on this or that. Even them, they're pretty bad. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. The only reason she goes to school is because of this one individual school. That's it. Right. It's because it's very unique, and there's pretty much only one in all of the country.
And that leads me back to, I see there's a guy and his wife that there are 2 separate accounts that I follow on X where they're both, I think they're in New Zealand, if I remember correctly, and I'm saying that because I always want to mix them up with Australia, and I feel like a jerk when I do it. But
it's same area of the world.
Yeah, but they homeschool. The father's involved in the homeschooling. The wife is involved in it, and they're very focused. To me, if you can manage that kind of lifestyle, that's fantastic. Where the wife is 90% homeschooling, teaching, and if I remember correctly, they have a couple kids, so she's spending that time teaching all these kids. I don't know how many they have, so I shouldn't say all these kids, but
45 children.
They have a couple football teams, but no.
Yeah, she must have a real good-looking set of legs. Many kids.
I have not seen an actual picture of her, but I mean, I'll admit, I enjoy reading what she posts on X. So her husband, I like her husband, nice guy.
Yeah, he's good.
But, and you obviously know who I'm talking about, but the fact is, and if I can get it worked out, hopefully we can get him on here, because he does a great job at talking about building up legacy, making a family legacy so that your kids can grow as well. So it's not just continuous. But back to my rant. With from what I understand, they do, and I don't know the whole thing, but the wife does take care of the kids, and she
Right.
homeschools, and she does all this stuff, and is involved in the homeschooling. And
Right.
like for us, my wife does homeschooling on Saturdays with trying to teach my son Chinese because I barely speak English well enough to, and at this point it's like I'm not even going to attempt Chinese because
Okay.
that's just a whole world of a mess for me. But I mean, to me, I understand the stay-at-home wife for that circumstance if you can manage it.
Yeah.
But I mean, in today's world,
It's hard.
it's hard, but I think it's not as hard as it used to be, especially with being able to work from home. So,
yeah, that's a good thing that's happened a lot lately.
So yeah, and that's the thing.
Mhm.
This will probably be the only good thing I'll ever say about COVID is it pushed companies to do the remote working. And even before COVID, I was always an advocate. I'm like, I could save you a ton of money. Just work from home. You're going to get more hours out of me because if something needs done, I can easily scurry down to my desk and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And,
For sure.
Things like that gives me the freedom, like I said, gives me the freedom to be able to manage, to homeschool and do what I need to.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
If you can do that, then I think that would be a much more suitable. But again, my personal opinion, because if I remember the current stat right now, it's only 26% of women are homemakers and 7% of fathers are. So
I can't remember. Yeah.
I Googled it earlier before we had this conversation just out of curiosity. But no, my cat wants to jump up on the recording setup. But the fact is that, hold on, let me throw this cat down, little girl. But the fact is I see the benefit in traditional family, like your wife is at home, she takes care of the house, you're trying to encourage her to do her own business, all these different things. To me, that makes perfect sense. And it makes more sense when you have the kids home for homeschooling.
Right.
Like you said, your kids has a rare opportunity to go to a specific type of school, which makes the big difference.
And it's only based on our location and where we live, just so happen to have this school.
Right. So you're in the same camp as I am on everything. And does this, here's a question, does this school go all the way to high school, or do they cut off? Okay.
Yeah, it a couple of years ago it didn't. It only, when we moved here originally, we didn't move here for the school. We moved here just because this area was just a good location for us in general as a family.
Right.
A lot of the stuff revolving around the county, the people, politics, stuff like that, all that stuff just aligned with us. So that's why we moved here. And when we moved here, we were looking at putting her in public school. We did a bunch of stuff, realized no, did some research, and we were going towards private school. And just so happened that school was here. And we, again, did more research. But when we first moved here, they only went up to like 9th grade. And then every year they added a year. And now that she's finally able, she was, because she wasn't old enough. She was like 1 and 2. By the time she was old enough to go into preschool, she started there in preschool. They actually had 12th grade. Okay. So by the time she made it to preschool and went to preschool, they had their 12th grade now. Now she's in pre-K, and next year she goes to kindergarten. But yeah, they have and they got a football team, they got a baseball team, soccer, basketball. I mean, they got all kinds of after school extracurricular activities, music and math classes, like math team and stuff like that. All the normal stuff like a normal school has. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's a much smaller population, and they just, I don't know, they treat it like an old-fashioned, like the way school used to be. They focus on the children and the importance of raising them to be knowledgeable, educated, and think for themselves. And
Right.
it's a pretty good school. It's interesting. So,
All
but
right.
no. Otherwise, she would be in homeschool all day.
Understanding. And that's the thing is, going after that traditional family, like you said, makes perfect sense. And right now, would you still advocate like your wife, since homeschooling? Because I remember you saying when you got married to your wife, you told her you don't have to work if you don't want to. I remember you saying that before. So you gave her that option to be a homemaker, or however you want to say it.
Yeah.
So would you change any of that if you had the opportunity?
Today, no. I mean, if I had the choice on whether she if it was up to me and whether she works or doesn't work, I would say no.
All right.
But I also view it as it's not up to me; it's up to her.
Right.
It's and honestly, me and her actually both have the same mindset. It's actually not up to me or her; it's up to us, and it's a decision the two of us need to make together. So that's actually how we look at it, and based, maybe I'm a racist. My wife is Asian, and she's very good at math, just like your wife is Asian.
Yeah, we made this joke before.
Right. Weird. I'm a racist. Oh my God. So whatever. But yeah, my wife is Asian. She is enormously good at math. Ha ha ha. But she actually did the statistics and the numbers and math, and based on a job and all of that stuff, it wouldn't benefit her, because for a while there, our kid didn't go to the school, right?
Right.
So we would have had to find daycare. And you know what's weird? Daycare is more expensive than the tuition of the school. That's insane, right?
Oh, it doesn't surprise me.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. You'd think it would be the other way around, but daycare, nope, it's more expensive than the tuition of the school. So it would have cost us money for her to go to work.
Right. That leads back to another thing, at least for my argument with homeschooling, is if you do the daycare, and you have more than one kid,
right,
you already are spending the money for the daycare.
Right.
And like I said, the only reason my daughter's not home is because of I'm homeschooling, I'm doing this and that. So, but as soon as she gets to the point I feel good. But yeah, that to me baffles me how daycare can be more expensive than some private schools. And I've seen it around here too. And I'm sitting there going, how do you charge this much?
Right. Like
to color pictures.
Her tuition is probably about $4,000 a year, $4,000 a year. That's the tuition. There are separate small things to add, such as like uniforms. She does do about an hour or two of after school on certain days because she's in pre-K, so they only go to noon. So she does about 2-3 hours on a couple, like 2-3 days a week, and they charge by the hour for that. And then there's a few other
things. Did you say 4,000 a year?
Mm-hmm.
So literally that's almost as much as one of my kids' classes we have them in. Not a school, just the nature class we signed them up for. That's just one class. I mean,
one class,
$4,000 a year. I think the cheapest private school we found around here was 30,000.
Yeah.
So that's why when you said 4,000, I'm like, hold up.
Wait a second. Yeah. Yeah,
that can't be right.
It goes up like as she gets older.
Right.
But I think even like high school kids are only about 5 or 6, like somewhere around there. Like I think like 6,500 or something like that for a high school kid.
And
That's it.
That's a year, not a quarter or semester.
Yeah, a year. Yeah, we get our bill every month. We typically will pay cash, like pay the whole year.
Yeah.
And then we'll get little bills every month of like $40-$50
Right.
or like $100. Say, because sometimes we'll have to replace a shirt, so we'll order a shirt and it's like $30. And we also do the what they call it, lunch bunch or whatever. It's where because she goes to noon, and afternoon is like the extracurriculars or whatever for her.
Okay. So it's half.
So she's only in kindergarten or pre-K, so she goes till noon. And then afternoon, it's, I think it's like $12 or $10 an hour for each hour after. And then there's a couple different like programs she can get in that you have to obviously add a little bit more for this. Like she's in dance. She does dance. She's in choir, and each one of those are like, an additional like $500 for the year or something like that. Something small. So overall, at her age, it probably costs us, with all the little added things, a total, like out the door, everything covered, clothes and all, books and whatever else. I mean, it probably really only costs about 65, maybe 7,000, I would say more along the lines of 6,000 for the whole year.
Yeah, that's cheap. I mean, I'd be honest with you, if I was in your shoes with that kind of cost, with the type of school it is, you betcha. I might even talk to my wife and say, hey, maybe we need to move to Florida.
Yeah. I don't know why. I've tried to wrap my head around it and try to figure out how they're financially capable of doing all that they do. And they're, I mean, I know they do all kinds of extra. So you got to think of it like a business. So
that's what I'm trying to do.
They don't do anything for free. Nothing. You know what I mean? Every little thing costs money. Everything. Whereas like if you go to most private schools, you pay typically a sum, and then it comes with this or that or the other. Trip to this, trip to that. They don't. It's basically like this school's basically operated like a la carte. Every single thing costs a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I don't know how they do it, but they do. And they are not in any sort of deficit or anything like that. You can go up on the the website or whatever and look up most businesses and their financial reports and stuff on the internet, and they're pretty good. They consider. I know that they are operating as a 501c, so I know that helps because that they don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
So that's definitely beneficial for them. So there's a bunch of stuff. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, like I said, that sounds like I can't picture a school charging that much, especially after the prices I've seen.
Yeah,
like I said,
I'll send you the link to the website. And I think they got some of their prices on there. That's pretty cool.
That's nuts, but yeah, I mean, that would be an opportunity. I would say, financially, logically, everything all around that school would be, but that is not the option for most people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's not a logical option for everybody.
Right, and like, I'll post things trying to promote the traditional type of lifestyle to a point, and but for me, like, anything I post or talk about, literally I can't sit there and go, oh well, you have to have a traditional wife and your wife needs to stay at home, especially like I said at the beginning of this, I told my wife I am not marrying somebody that's not going to work. I mean,
lazy woman, get to work.
And here's the thing is, my wife is when it comes to work, she's far from lazy. I mean,
right, yeah.
She kills herself to get the job done. She studies for her certifications.
Oh yeah.
She does all
That's
these
how
things.
my wife is too. She's the same.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, it's like, that was part of the reason I sat there and go, I can't go wrong if she's willing to work. She's much better at finance than I am. There's no question about that. Math. And we even joked that my son's a bad Asian because he only does first grade math as kindergarten. Oh, we talked about it.
You should be doctor by now.
What was it? The kindergarten class, math class, required addition, subtraction, and even some double-digit math to be able to go into Chinese math at kindergarten. I'm like, I don't know if I would have been able to do that at kindergarten myself even. And the schools weren't even that bad back then. Yeah. At least not that I remember. I know they're not as bad as they are now.
Yeah. But now public schools are like, you can tell how bad public schools are just by, you can get on like, if you got TikTok, God forbid. But I mean, Facebook Reels and even some X stuff or Instagram Reels, and you see those people, hey, who was the first president of the United States? And they're like,
oh, yeah.
They're like Kanye West. And you're like, really? Come on.
Well, what is it? I saw a video where a guy was making a joke about the kids in a class. It was an SNL skit. Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Chris Rock, all the greats. I mean, you had
all the greats, yeah.
When SNL was funny, and they had Jerry Seinfeld was playing a teacher in a high school, and literally it was like he's sitting there trying to teach history, and he's like, okay, who can tell me one side of the party that the British was involved in the British War? And everyone's sitting there going, no one raised their hands. And finally somebody goes, British? He's like, yes. What country was the British in? And it was funny because like all the kids act like they didn't know anything whatsoever, you know? Yeah. And I'm sitting there laughing at it. Then you go through the comments and there's people who goes, I just graduated from school. This is not far from the truth now. Yeah. There's people
not even in the curriculum. Yeah.
There's people that were saying, I've been a teacher for years, and this is better than what it is in schools. Right. So I mean, yeah, that's why you'll never see me be an advocate for public schools ever.
Oh yeah, no.
Personally,
no. If all of the teachers were like my wife's mom, because she was a teacher for like 35, 36, 40 years, I don't know, however, forever. And she retired as a third grade public school teacher and then went into like adult education and been doing that for like 15, 20 years, something like that, for whatever. Right. But if all of the public school teachers were like her, we wouldn't have an issue.
Oh yeah. And well, look at, we had Jake on, and he was a public school teacher, and his views and his interest in actually teaching and all this. I mean, if teachers were still like that, and like you said, I don't know if it's really, yes, there's a lot of bad teachers. I mean, heck, you don't even have to have a teaching degree to teach anymore, which kills me. The whole, well, how are you qualified to teach? How's half these people teaching qualified to teach? I mean, you have people teaching English with a gender studies. I mean, so basically they couldn't get a job anywhere else, so they decided to teach your kids about the propaganda they were taught in college.
And I've seen a lot of public schools around certain, obviously on the internet, the internet's always correct.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Every single thing that you see on the internet is 100% correct. But I've seen a lot on the internet where these schools, public schools, are literally hiring teachers with like no credentials whatsoever.
Oh yeah, I saw
none.
I saw something even locally here where they put out a ad for teachers, and before you had to have a master's degree before.
Right.
Then they lowered it to a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything about a bachelor's. I mean, I have a bachelor's in business that I don't use. Well, and then it's like, if you have any experience, then apply. I'm sitting there going, well, what experience do you want this person to have to be able to teach? And then they go off and, well, I'm a teacher. Really, what do you teach? Oh, I teach English. Okay. What was your background? Oh, I went to community college for this, and I almost finished it. I'm like, okay. And you can't
went
finish.
Went to a 6-week course and got certified to be a teacher.
Yeah, and you think that somebody that has built a family, built a home, has maintained it, knows
is
how
less qualified than me.
Yeah, because I don't do it in a public school.
Right.
And
my wife's mom has like I think she's got like 2 master's degrees and a bachelor's degree. She's been like the head of some, one of the things that controls like the teachers and all this stuff, like all kinds of stuff.
Oh, the unions.
She's one of the unions or whatever. I mean, my wife's mom is no slack. You know what I mean?
Right.
She's, aside for her flaming liberal ideologies, love you, Mom, whatever. But as far as like a teacher goes, amazing. If teachers were like her, we would have no issues, because as one of the good things about her, even though she does have quite a few liberal ideologies that, me and her don't agree on.
Right.
She understands that is not appropriate for school at all.
See,
like, period.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you. If the teacher wants to vote liberal, if the teacher wants to vote Republican, if the teacher wants to vote, who knows, whatever third party is popping up, whatever it is, good for them.
Your students shouldn't even know that you vote.
Exactly. But
none of their business.
But like I'm at the point of, and my wife hates it, that when my son doesn't listen, I go, like when he fights me about he just wants to play games or play around, I'm like, no, we have to have time for studying. We have to do some classes. We have to learn something other than nature,
Yeah.
So I always threaten them with public school. If you don't do this, they're gonna force you to go to public school. But
send you to public school, you little rat.
So I'm at the point of that. To me, that is my threat: is, hey, if you don't listen, you're gonna have to go to public school. And I've actually coined the phrase "dummycrats" with him.
Dummycrats, yeah.
Dummycrats. So if you don't listen and don't do your work, you're going to end up having to go back with the dummycrats in public school. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And that politics aside, that actually was not meant to be like a political thing. Just he watched a show called Wildcrats.
Yeah.
That's where I got it from. And then I'll admit, some people's heard it and he say it and they're like, well, that's just insensitive to think. I'm like, no, it's accurate calling people in public school dummycrats. But don't get me wrong, there are kids in there that are smart. I'm sure there has to be at least one or two. That is until the school.
They're probably all quite smart. They're just not given the opportunity.
That's the thing is, by the time the public school has their way with them, and hopefully that's just metaphorical, but the by the time the public school's done with them, intelligence is questionable. I mean,
right.
So, because look at it, it's a mess. Teachers no longer have power to be authorities.
Yeah.
And the ones that are trying to pull that they have an authority or something are trying to push a hugely woke agenda.
Right.
And it's not good. And when you have that kind of stuff being pushed on the kids, of course they're going to rebel because it's unnatural, it's unhuman.
Right.
It's not appropriate for kids to learn this kind of stuff. And
they start forgetting how to freely think and stuff like that, think for themselves.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a horror thing, and it's kind of a horror thing that we've fallen off the tracks again and went to the difference between a homemaker and a working wife to how horrible public school is. But, of course,
it all plays in the same...
It does.
It all meshes together, so...
It does, and the problem is public schools are very easy to pick on.
Yeah.
Like the conversation.
Along with Democrats.
Yeah, but like the conversation we had with Jake, and just on that note, not all Democrats are bad.
Right.
There are some people that are classic liberals that you can have conversations with, but the moment that they start going far left, just like a far right is somebody that's far right.
It's exactly the same for people that are overly
zealous on any side. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but obviously how the things I see, the Democrats are not even that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop saying the Democrats doing it. I'm going to just say the woke people doing it. Yeah. They're the true dummycrats that are trying to destroy Democrats. There might be good people out there in the Democrat Party that are trying to do things for the right reason and value things. So
for sure.
Don't take offense if we're making fun of Democrats. It's kind of an interchangeable for wokeism nowadays. But I mean, the fact is it's a whole lot easier to make fun and poke at them for the things they're doing because it is stupid. But let's do this. I have to go get my daughter and get ready for my son's birthday party and all this other crazy stuff I have to do. So how about we cut this off for everyone and just call it a day?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a good, interesting, all over the place talk
I
about
agree.
this stuff.
So, all right, sounds good. So this is the end of the conversation for everybody. So thank you. Take it easy, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, and don't forget our websites.
Oh, yes. How could I forget this?
pancakeswithyourdad.com, callwithdads.com. You can find us on X, Facebook, Instagram, True Social, and LinkedIn.
And Call with Dads, Pancakes with Your Dads. Obviously, Call with Dads, I think we're only our website, callwithdads.com. We have our website. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So, good places. And, reach out to us with any questions you have. If you like what we put, you have questions. If you want to try to get more into one of our views of something we said, reach out. We're more than happy to talk with you. So, with that being said,
absolutely.
I guess now's the time to actually say goodbye.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Go subscribe to our stuff.
Exactly.
All right, man.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.